We did very well here, of course, nationally. We're not too happy. And even in New York State, we see that Trump made some significant gains.
Hi there, it's WAMC News Director Ian Pickus, and on this episode of the WAMC News Podcast, what went wrong for the Democrats? New York Democrats came into the election working feverishly to flip several key House seats, and they largely succeeded. But that was a rare bright spot during a huge performance for Republicans and once and future President Donald Trump, who made gains in New York and nationwide as part of his decisive win. Joining us now to hash the election out is Jay Jacobs, chair of the New York State Democratic Committee. Thank you for being here, Jay.
Thank you for having me.
What's your key takeaway from this election result?
Well, I think on the local level in New York State, I think we did very well. There was certainly a lot of disappointment 2 years ago when we lost 4 congressional seats that Joe Biden had won in the previous election. And, we made it a major priority, of course, to win those seats back. And we won 4 seats back. We started that with Tom Suozzi's special election after George Santos had to vacate his seat. And then we added to it on Tuesday with, another congressional seat in Nassau County. So now both of Nassau County's seats went from red to blue. And then we've got Josh Riley, who is likely to be elected in the Hudson Valley, and you've got John Mannion in CD 22. So we did very well here, of course, nationally. We're not too happy, and even in New York State, we see that Trump made some significant gains with voter blocks, and for whatever reason, and we're analyzing it now, the voter turnout wasn't as strong as we would have liked.
Now, in the 17th district, you were hoping to win that seat back from Mike Lawler, who was able to win a second term against Mondaire Jones. There's a lot of speculation that he might be ready to run for governor now. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing for me to agree or disagree. I don't know what he's going to do. I would say to you from the start, when we looked at that district, we knew that was going to be a tough district for us, the toughest of them all. Holding Pat Ryan's seat was important to us, and that was a concern. We're glad we did that. But what Congressman Lawler decides to do, that I can't predict.
So you mentioned some of the gains that Trump made in places that were a little surprising, frankly, like New York City and some of the suburbs. How concerned are you about that dynamic?
Well, look, it has to go to the fact that he ran on a platform of really anger and fear. That's the typical Republican playbook, and it happened to resonate with far too many voters who are angry and have good reason to be angry, whether it's economic issues that anger them or cultural, social issues that anger them, they're fed up, and so they voted for him, and. We have, as a party, we have to listen carefully and understand, what it is that voters were trying to tell us, and we've got to, make some changes.
I know part of your job is to project optimism for Democrats' chances and performance and so on, but were you very surprised by what you saw Tuesday?
Yes, I was. Yeah. I'm not going to make any bones about it. I'm surprised about it in my own county. I'm surprised about it in New York State, and I was surprised about it in our country. I listened to Donald Trump. I listened to some of those rallies. I saw what he had to say. Never mind what people around him were saying. At Madison Square Garden, and for me. I listen to those things and to the threats he makes to have this mass deportation of citizens and some non-citizens and sometimes citizens, and he talks about Haitians taking people's pets and eating them and all of that business. And I just could not imagine that a majority of American voters, certainly in our state and in my county in particular, and of course across the country, would feel that's someone they want to put back in the Oval Office. And yet they just did it. So for me, I have to, recalibrate some of my thinking. Not that I would go to agree with what he has to say, but I have to understand that there are voters who are willing to discount things that are so abhorrent to me because they've got issues that are more important to them.
Do you think that there was any universe in which Joe Biden would have overperformed what Vice President Harris did in the election?
Hard for me to predict that, honestly. I've given that some thought. Mm-hmm. I can't come up with an answer to that. I can go both ways on that one. I think that, a lot of it, first of all, I think Joe Biden did a great job as president. I mean, I think that, what he leaves the country, the economic condition he leaves the country in after, remember where we started off, worrying about going into a deep recession, coming out of COVID, getting people vaccinated, and the CHIPS Act and American Rescue Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, all of those things. The infrastructure bill, $1.2 trillion going into building up our infrastructure across this country. I think these are fabulous things that he did. I think that perhaps where he could have done better, perhaps, was in communicating. People didn't understand, why there was inflation and that we would, get through inflation. Why that was happening to all of us. And I think that lack of understanding gave an opening for Trump. Now, could he have engaged in the campaign to communicate that to voters? I don't know. I just, it's really hard to predict. And again, one of the hits on him, unfortunately, is people who may agree with what I just said would also agree that he just came across as being too old. And that I think was a liability that was hard for him to overcome.
Do you think that Vice President Harris could run for the White House again?
Well, in this country, I think it's possible. I didn't think Donald Trump could run for the White House again, so I'm sure I'm going to say that she can't. I like her an awful lot. I think she did a great job in this campaign. It was near flawless, and certainly that's an option for her. But I think as a party, moving forward, as we've got to take a look at really what it is that we feel defines us, and we need to articulate that in a way that is attractive to more voters. And who the vehicle is to best deliver that message, we've got a good period of time, at least 2.5 to 3 years, to begin figuring that out.
It's going to be, in all likelihood, a pretty grim time for your party in Washington. So here's a question for you. Who's the leader of the National Democratic Party right now?
Well, I mean, once Joe Biden and Kamala Harris leave Washington, then I would say to you that you've got our leader Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are going to be the leaders of our party and have quite a lot to say about it. That doesn't mean they're the only voices. You're going to be hearing a lot of voices. You're going to be hearing a lot of opinions and a lot of ideas for how we can, make our party once again the predominant party for a majority of voters in this country. And we've got work to do, and we're working on it, and we'll get there. Look, politics is a cyclical business, and you never should assume if you're on top that you're going to stay there, because you never do. And you never should assume if you're on the short end of it that you're going to stay there either, because if you play your cards right and you're smart about it, you're back on top before you know it. And I think that's what we'll see with the Democratic Party. But to get there, we better smarten up and better articulate a message that is about bringing back the American dream for everyone, an opportunity, making sure that people in our working class think that they're getting a fair deal and that we're paying attention. And unfortunately, I don't think they think that too many times with our party, and that we're upholding common sense. We get ourselves into these discussions and arguments about things that really are so minute in the real world, but yet people just aren't attracted to those kinds of things, and it turns them off. And
like culture issues and so on.
Yeah, like culture issues. Yeah, and it's not that they're not important. It's not that we shouldn't be clear that everybody deserves respect in this country. But where's our focus? What are we talking about? And we have to be able to shoot straight with people and come at it in a common sense way. We've got to become to them more moderate, which is what I've been arguing for years. We are a party of moderates. You've got a small group that are on the more extreme side of our party, and their voices are loud, and the Republicans amplify those voices and try to make voters believe that we're a party that's fairly radical, which is just not true. I asked them to take a look at their party, and you could see that on their fringe, boy, they've got some real ugly things to look at. But it seems to me the voters get distracted and they don't seem to care about that, but they have to.
So let's just wrap up by kind of talking about where we started this conversation, which was back in New York. Governor Hochul and the state party put a lot of attention into winning back those House seats. As you look at the data and knowing how close relatively Congressman Zeldin got to defeating Hochul last time, what's your outlook for her reelection chances a couple years from now?
Well, I think that much depends upon what the governor does between now and then, what's going on in the world, the political environment. A lot has to do with whether, voters like what they see in a Trump administration or they don't, because national stuff does impact the local and the statewide. And so there are a lot of things that go into it. I believe this governor is doing a great job. I think she's going to be spending the next year and a half making sure that voters understand what her governorship is all about. She was instrumental in building up the Democratic Party, putting together the coordinated campaign, raising the monies for the coordinated campaign so that we could achieve what we did in this past election, and she deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. But she hasn't been getting the credit for some of the things governmentally that she's been doing, because I don't know that voters really see her for what she is. She's been the recipient of a huge onslaught of millions, actually tens of millions of dollars in advertising against her from one group or another over the time that she's been in office since being elected, and that she pays a price for that politically, and she's got to now present herself to the voters so that they can see who Kathy Hochul is, what Kathy Hochul stands for, and what her vision for New York State is all about. And I think when she does that, which she will, voters are going to respond in kind, and she'll be reelected.
Jay Jacobs is chair of the New York State Democratic Committee. Jay, thank you for taking some time to speak with us during a very busy stretch of days for you. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. You take care.
Okay, that does it for this episode of the WAMC News Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, I'm Ian Pickus.